Hello, welcome to the Ramblings of a Trucker. My name's Alan and I work as a tramper in the UK. So in this episode I'm going to talk about navigating, in particular sat-navs versus maps, and just how I get around the country. Now when I started going out with my dad as a kid in his truck, there was no such thing as mobile phones. We just had a map, and the one map that everyone had in their truck was a Philips Navigator. Now my dad was a bulk tipper driver, same as me, and the reason we preferred, or still prefer, the Philips Navigator is because it shows you every farm, and it shows it by name. Now there isn't an index of every farm, but if you know, for example, you're going to Crewe, and it's, I don't know, Home Farm outside Crewe, you can open the page at Crewe and start looking at all the farms dotted around it until you find Home Farm. Now I know people are going to say, yeah, but we have sat-nav now and we've got Google Maps and blah blah blah. It's often, particularly in this job, bulk tipper work, it's not the best option. I'll give you an example. So yesterday I was picking up a load of rye from down near Godalming, and so in this job you've got to ring the farmer because they're often managing several farms, and the farm where your load is might not be the farm where they're ploughing, so you need to tell them roughly when you're going to get there. For most jobs you've got to give them an hour's notice. So I phoned the farmer, I'm driver such and such, I'm coming to pick up some rye. Yeah. I said, are there any special instructions for getting to your farm? Now we do this with every collection to a farm. And he said, yeah, actually there is, because there's been a lot of flooding and there's a tree come down and the road that your sat-nav will try and take you along, you can't get through now. He said, so you're going to have to go down to this village, you're going to have to take this road. Don't take the main road because you won't get through because of all the parked cars. Take the one before that cuts through the houses. When you get to the end of that road, you turn left, go up there. It's a little bit flooded, but you will get through. And then the sign for the farm will come up on your right-hand side after about a mile. Now, if someone had relied on their sat-nav, they'd have gone down this road where the tree had come down and where there was severe flooding. And then they'd have had no end of trouble trying to reverse an Arctic back down this road that's barely the width of the truck, back out onto the main road, and then have to find an alternative route. So relying on your sat-nav, it's got its benefits. They show you where traffic delays are, things like that, one-way streets, but sometimes local knowledge is better. And sometimes, in fact, many times, looking at a map is better. So I'll punch in a postcode into Google Maps and see where my delivery is. And then I'll zoom out, because the most direct route might not be the best route. Are you thinking, why not? Well, the most direct route might go past a couple of schools, and my delivery time might be 9 AM. Would you want to fight through all that traffic at 44 tonne in an Arctic, past 2 schools, during the school run, when you could avoid it? So I might look at the map and, actually, if I stay on the ring road and come in from the other side, there aren't any schools. Yeah, it's longer in terms of mileage, but it's actually going to be easier and quicker. And unfortunately, there's an awful lot of new drivers who don't know how to read a map. They rely solely on their sat-nav, and they end up getting into trouble as a result. Despite all the technology that's in this truck, I've got 2 smartphones. On one smartphone, I've got Google Maps. On the other, I've got Google Maps and a truck navigator app called Roadlords. It's really good. I'm going to do an episode about that later on. But also, built into the truck stereo, there's a truck sat-nav. So you put in your length, your width, your height, your weight. It knows where you are, where you're going to, and it will avoid all the restrictions. But it won't take into account local knowledge. But despite having all that at my fingertips, in my overhead locker, I've got 2 paper maps. I've got the Philips Navigator, and I've also got a bridge height map that shows you all the low bridges and width restrictions in the UK. So why have I got those? Well, the simple fact is, technology fails. We've all had a mobile phone that at some point hasn't turned on. It keeps crashing, it's dead, becomes a brick. Yeah, okay, I've got 2. But how many times have you had something stolen out of a vehicle? Or you've heard of someone having something stolen out of a vehicle? People break in, they smash windows, they steal phones. People drop phones, they lose phones. Technology fails, and people will steal technology. If that happens, I've got my paper maps to fall back on. If you haven't got a paper map and your technology fails, what are you going to do? And I've navigated myself around 14 European countries in a truck with paper maps. So anyone who says, no, you can't do it, you've got to have sat-nav. No, you don't. You can get anywhere with a paper map, even when the technology fails, when you haven't got a signal. Open your paper map and it shows you where you are. Well, it doesn't show you where you are, but you can work out where you are and where you're going to. So my advice to everyone who's going to start driving is get yourself an atlas. Get yourself a Philips Navigator and get yourself a bridge map. And if you never use it, brilliant. But if the proverbial hits the fan and you have to get from A to B or from B back to base or wherever, and you've spent your entire driving career relying on sat-nav, you're going to struggle to get back. You're going to make yourself look stupid. I don't know how to get back to base. Invest in some maps. Study the maps. Now, the reason I mention this is because earlier this week there was a driver on TikTok. They were doing a TikTok live, and this driver was at a location, and to get to this location they'd stopped at a couple of services to try and get fuel, and those particular services where the driver had stopped didn't accept that particular fuel card. So the driver was making the delivery and then going from B to C. Now, I knew this route, and I have the same fuel card that this driver had. And the driver said, I need to get fuel en route. So I typed in, because I was on my break, I typed in a comment saying you need to go up this road, and then onto this road, and then stop at the first garage that you see, because they take your card, and you can get trucks in there. It's got a high canopy. So immediately the driver on TikTok, they read the comment and said, what's it called? But it doesn't matter what it's called, just follow those directions and you'll get there, and you'll get your fuel. Yeah, but what's it called? I need to look it up. And it suddenly occurred to me that this new generation of drivers, they don't know the way around this little island. They don't know which road leads from where to where. They don't know how to get from A to B without following the sat-nav. And what's going to happen when technology fails? They're going to be stuck. They're going to have to ring their boss. Probably borrow someone else's phone. I'm at such and such, and I don't know how to get back. Now, I did say in my first episode that I was going to throw in, some stories. And I'm going to round up this episode with a story about a lovely guy that I used to work with. His name's Wolfie. Wolfie, I hope you're listening, mate. I hope you're still alive and kicking. I haven't seen you for 20 years, maybe more. So we both work for the same company, and this company subcontracted to another company. And I got put on that contract for about 8 months a year. And it was basically moving 20-foot shipping containers from A to B. And then when you got to B, they swapped the 2 shipping containers for 2 other ones, and you went back to A. And you could do 4 round trips in a week, Aylesbury to Carlisle. and then back to Aylesbury. Nice steady number. And sometimes I needed some help. There was more containers needed moving than I could manage. So they'd throw 1, 2, 3 extra drivers, and I'd help them. You know, this is where we pick up the containers, and this is where we take them to, and this is the crack. So my mate Wolfie, he rocks up one Monday morning, and he says, "I've been told I've got to help you this week." I said, "Okay." He says, "What we're doing?" I said, "Well, we'll use their trailers. They'll put 2 20-foot containers on here with a forklift. We'll drive up to Carlisle. They'll take them off with a crane, and then they'll put 2 more on, and then we'll come back down to Aylesbury." He said, "All right." He says, how long does it take? How far is it?" Well, it's about 5 hours 40 minutes from here to Carlisle. So we'll have a break at T-Bay, carry on. I said, "We'll swap the containers, have a shower. We'll come back down to Wigan, have an overnight in Wigan. Then we'll carry on down to Aylesbury. Again, swap the containers, back up to Carlisle, have a night out in Carlisle." "All right." He said, "Have you got the postcode?" I said, "No." I said, "Just follow me." "No, I want the postcode." I said, "What do you want the postcode for?" He says, "To put in my sat-nav." I said, "But you're following me. You've been to Carlisle before." "Yeah, I want to put it in my sat-nav." "We'll go in the office and ask him for the postcode." So in he goes, comes back with the postcode written on a bit of paper, punches it in. Sure enough, his sat-nav corroborates what I said, 5 hours 40 minutes. So I said, "Okay." He says, "I'll follow you." I'm thinking, why did you even ask for the sat-nav? Ask for the postcode for your sat-nav. So off we go. So we get up to Carlisle, swap us containers, and he says, "Well, where we're going now?" I says, "Back to Aylesbury." He said, "What's the postcode?" I said, "You've just come from there." "Yeah, I want the postcode." I said, "Well, you're going to have to get it from the office because I don't need the postcode." I didn't have a sat-nav at this point. I had a map that I relied on when I needed it, but I generally knew where to get, pretty much everywhere in the country. And so he goes up and he gets the postcode, he punches it in, and he says, "Yeah, it's 5 hours 40 minutes. I said, "Yeah, it's exactly the same as what we've just done." He said, "So where are we going to stop?" I said, "Wigan." He said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because I've been doing this job for 8 months a year for the past however many years. We'll stop at Wigan. We'll have a night out near the Asda distribution centre, and then we'll crack on in the morning." "Okay, I'll follow you." So he follows me. And sure enough, the whole week was like this, and at every stage, Aylesbury or Carlisle, he'd be punching in the postcode into his sat-nav, and we'd still do the same journey. And it just tickles me how some people are so dependent on this technology just to get around this little island. And it is a little island. When you've travelled most of Europe, the UK is just a dot on a bit of paper. Use your sat-nav by all means. Do not rely on it. Get used to using maps and seek local knowledge, particularly if you're going to start doing tipper work. Ring the farmer. What's the best way into your farm? Follow his instructions. Use your sat-nav to get within 10 miles of the farm, and then use his instructions. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to wrap this up because I'm just delivering some rye. And it looks like I'm down to my last 300 or 400 kilos. So I need to go around, sort that out, sweep out the trailer, and head off. Okay, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. There'll be another episode out shortly. Thanks, bye.